All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think we've got a great topic lined up for this month, and certainly as we look towards the end of August into September, the crop will certainly be coming out faster than we realize, and certainly some of these cooler nights we've had this week have made us at least make some of the nights feel like fall. So certainly means that pit pumping and manure hauling is going to be coming up very quickly. I think we've got some great timely information to be able to visit with and share on that topic pertaining to practices related to managing disease outbreaks and maybe some solutions we can have in the meantime. So very much looking forward to this discussion here today. Our speaker is Dr. Paula Poeta Silva. Dr. Poeta Silva obtained a DVM and a master's degree in veterinary epidemiology in Brazil, and then got her PhD in population animal medicine at Iowa State University. And currently, she's a research scientist in the field epi team and coordinates the PRRS Outbreak Management Program. So very happy and very pleased to have Dr. Poeta Silva with us. Before I turn it over, just want to remind our audience that feel free to, as questions arise, to go ahead and put those in the chat, and we will address those at the end of the presentation then. So with that, Dr. Silva, I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah, I want to thank this opportunity here for the Science Center for Iowa State University. It's really good to have this contact with academia, producers, and swine vets. So the title of this presentation is From Pit to Pigs, Pit Pumping, PRRS Outbreaks, and Practical Solutions. So first question is, why do we pump manure from the deep pits or lagoons? So you have some publications from research from Iowa State as well, showing that swine farms produce over 50 billion kilograms of wet basis manure every year. And pig manure is an abundant source of macro and micronutrients for the field, so they're excellent crop fertilizers. However, because pigs gonna produce manure continuously, the manure pump will be important because there is limited storage in the barn pits and earth lagoons, and also the needs for the crops. So how it's going to work, like as I mentioned, there's limited storage capacity of the pits and the lagoons. And the schedule of pumping in the USA Midwestern are going to follow the plant seasons. So typically, majority of the pump will be happening fall and early, between fall and early winter, and some on the spring. So fall after harvest, and then early spring for prior to the planting. And these are the basic steps. Overall, what's the manure handling? So we start with the manure homogenization and agitation under the people in the earth lagoon, so what you call pumping. So the manure from here can either go directly to the crop field using a drag hose. So we're gonna have like 2 miles of drag hose that are gonna be attached to a sprayer, or that manure can be hauled by a truck and then going to be applied by the sprayer in the crop. So there is potential problems to pig health. That's because we need pump for the crop fields, but the agitation, homogenization, and spraying can contribute to the spread of pathogens across swine facilities. That's because pumping and applying manure can produces airborne particles, and there is a study from 2022 of other researchers that shows that these manure handling can create airborne particles of specific size that can be inhaled by pigs and humans or the workers. So, and those are also all unintended consequence of the manure pumping and application. So the tag, because how the process works. So the manure pumping can how can affect the pigs, right? Because it is going to change the temperature in the barn. So for instance, the pumping is going to happen in the fall, early winter. So it's cold, so you need to open the barn ventilation, and so pigs may be cold for a little while. It can have some gases, and also the process of agitation can facilitate the spread of pathogens through contaminated equipment, which can exacerbate any lingering infection. So so there's this unintentional consequences of pumps. So our goal here is to provide solutions, how we can do our best to create a better process in the field for the agriculture aspect, and also for the swine veterinary medicine aspect. So, and the disease that is going to be more likely attached to this manure pumping is the PRRS reproductive and respiratory syndrome virus, or PRRS, which is a major economic burden for the swine industry. There is a study here in the US that was done by our coworkers here at Iowa State University as well, and shows that PRRS can cause 1.1 million dollars per year. So, and PRRS in its epidemiology has two characteristics that's going to be aligned with this manure pumping and manure handling. So some researchers shows that PRRS can be found viable, so that means that can be still infect the animal. So viable PRRS can be recovered from pig manure for up to 35 days at 4 degrees Celsius and up to 7 days at 25 degrees Celsius. So align with like a pumping happening fall, winter, when the temperature is lower, that's going to facilitate the survival of PRRS in the deep pits in the manure. And also PRRS is an airborne pathogen, so viable PRRS can be recovered from air samples at 9.1 kilometers from the infectious sources and be also be associated with infection. So given that, we want to first, this study is a part of our research here that we did in our group. The research had two objectives, or we're going to be calling two studies. So study one was to quantify the risk of the win to market pig lots reporting a PRRS outbreaks within 5 weeks after performing two types of manure exposure. So we're gonna call the manure pumping out of the site, and also the receiving manure to the adjacent crop field of the site, or the sprayed manure to the crop field. So we're going to be analyzing those two exposures separately and quantify the effect on the PRRS outbreaks. We are also going to, as a second study on this research, we want to identify manure pumping and receive manure related risk factors associated with the reporting of the PRRS outbreaks within these 5 weeks after the two exposures. So methods for the both studies, they're all, this is a retrospective observational study that's all based on data stored by one pig production system in the US. So the population of interest are pig lots that are placed in either nurseries, wean to finish, and grow finishing sites between July 2020 and December 2022. The outcome of interest is going to be the PRRS outbreak. And for this study, we used as a definition of a PRRS outbreak the pig lots that report a PRRS RNA detection in tissue samples. And we know that diagnostics the trigger for collection of sample types for diagnosis of disease is going to be based here in the herd veterinary assessment of the clinical history, like mortality and sick animals and the need to treat animals. And the control lots are lots that did not report any PRRS detection during the production period. So as I mentioned, we are going to looking at two exposures of interest. The first exposure is the pumping manure exposure. So having that pumping event, so lots that underwent at least one manure pumping out of the pit event of the site. And we know that pumping can happen within couple days in the same sites, depending on the size of the pit, the amount of manure there. So the manure event is going to be like that. All the visits to that site are going to be counted as one manure event. The receiving manure, or the application of manure to the adjacent crop field, so are lots that receive manure at least once in the adjacent crop field of the site. So lots are placed in the site that is receiving manure. So you're going to measure this receiving within 1, 3, and 5 miles of the site. So as I explained, the pumping and receiving manure events here in this study refer to this continuous manure removal and application operation conducted at a single site or the crop field over that defined period that the contractor is doing that work. So again, pumping and receiving manure can include multiple trucks visits depending on the size of pit, earth lagoon, or the crop field. Just about like a little bit on the swine system and how the swine system manages manure pumping and manure application. So the swine system that we are using is going to include around 240K sows, and there is 600 win to market sites. The system they manage the manure pumping operations at all its sites by hiring third-party contractors and define the pumping schedules. So they collect data, who was the contractor, the dates of manure pumping, the dates of manure application, which crop fields receive the manure, was used a drag hose or a truck, was used what type of sprayer, was an indirect, a direction injection, broadcast, or airway. However, the system does not have full control over the manure application to the adjacent crop field. So this means that some crop fields from the system sites may receive manure in the adjacent crop field from a different swine system. However, the system has full control of over manure application to the crop field of a specific group of sites that are called protected sites in the system, which are sites that have higher biosecurity and surveillance standards. Particularly because those win to market sites, they're located near to sow farms. So they have higher biosecurity, they have routine collection of sample types. So the system is going to control all the manure application of this category. So that's the reason in this study here in the studies that I'm going to mention, the analysis of receiving manure or manure application, only included lots that are placed in these protected sites and that receive manure from a different pumped source. That's because, okay, the site can be pumped and receive the manure. So to not have an overlap between the two exposure effects, we are going to only using for the receiving manure the sites that did not pump but receive manure. Okay, and then for the pumping, we are using all the sites that pumped at least one pumping event. So let's talk about specifically about the study 1. So that's to quantify the risk of PRRS outbreaks within 5 weeks after performing pump or receive the manure. Okay, so why we're gonna use this 5-week window post pumping? So we want to measure the effect of pumping, right? So we are interested in everything that happened after a pump event. And why the 5-week window is because PRRS shedding in clinical signs typically are going to be within 4 weeks post infection in the pig population. Like this, accounting for the spread, the shedding, the spread of disease, and you start to see the clinical signs to be noticeable from the vet or the pig producer. And we're gonna add one extra week to account for the delays in the outbreak investigation, collection of sample types, and then getting results from the lab. To analyze these, we did a selection of all lots that we have available from this swine system. So we are going to use a case control matching design. So the lots that are included in this analysis, they are all matched by placement week, by the outbreak week when the PRRS outbreak week when reported, by the pumping week, or in the case receiving week or receiving manure week. And they are also matched by a spatial location. So we create 30 kilometers array of radius of clusters. So we are going to analyze those. We're going to analyze only analyze the lots and within sites that have a spatial location relationship. And the 30 kilometers radius was decided because, as I mentioned before, PRRS can be detected from the source, from this infectious source within 10 kilometers. And also based on this data, in this data set, we observed that the transportation of manure and equipment has a median of 25 kilometers. It's like a contractor, he's going to travel 25 kilometers as median within a 4-week interval. So we decided for this 3 kilometers radius to create those clusters. So here's the example how we match the data. So for instance, we have in the data what you call spatial cluster 1. So have all the sites that are within the 30 kilometers radius, and you have the weeks that the lots are placed. So we select lots that have pump and then they have the outbreak, and you match a lot that did not have pump but had the outbreak, and match the outbreak dates. Lots that did pump but did not have the outbreak, so we match the pump dates. And you have lots that did not have anything. They did not pump and they did not have the outbreak. Same thing with like a second cluster. So we have, I think it was around 50 clusters that has the same match. We are matching pump dates, outbreak dates, and you have these variations of like sites that did not pump or did not have the outbreak, did pump but did not have the outbreak, or did not pump and have the outbreak. And also we match by the placement week. So we have pigs of the same age going through these events. So overview of the data and results from the study 1. So remember we use win to market population. Those pigs are placed between June 2020 and December 2022. So we have around 2,593 lots across 599 sites. The distribution, there are 5% nursery, 82% win to finish, and 13% grow finishing. And out of those, from the total number of lots, 52.8% they had at least one manure pumping event. For the outcome, in this case, the PRRS outbreak, we have a total of 380 lots that reported a PRRS outbreak. Of those, 80 lots included the PRRS outbreak within that 5 weeks after the pumping or 5 weeks after the receiving. So remember, when you're talking about the analysis of receiving manure or manure application, I'm going to only be talking about protected sites, which in this study are 56 protected sites in total. And those sites, they house 264 lots. Of those, 26% are nursery, 57% win to finish, 17% grow finishing. And of those, 75% receive manure at some point in the production phase. So this table is going to show you the season and year, the number of pumping and receiving events by season and year, and the PRRS outbreak. And the sum is going to be 100% for each variable. So just by looking, this is just like raw descriptive numbers, just showing you the most frequently events. You can see that the majority of the pumping and receiving events was in the fall of 2021 with 37.4%, followed by the fall of 2022, which was 27.9%. And this is also aligned with the majority of the PRRS outbreaks. So fall 2021 was 20.3% of all PRRS outbreaks and 16% of all PRRS outbreaks in the fall of 2022. So this table here is going to show you the quantified risk of the PRRS outbreak within 5 weeks following the manure exposures, the manure pumping and the manure receiving manure event. So first part of the table here highlighted in red, you can see the comparison and the odds ratio of a PRRS outbreak. So the lots that pumped, they had 3.38 odds, higher odds to have a PRRS outbreak compared to the sites that did not pump. And this variable is a significant variable with p-value of lower than 0.05. Now, looking at the receiving manure events, you can see that lots that receive manure up to 1 mile from the site, they had a 4.09 higher odds to have a PRRS outbreak compared to lots that did not receive manure at this distance. We also have a significant odds ratio for lots that receive manure up to 3 miles. So you can see that lots that receive manure up to 3 miles, they have odds of 3.05 higher compared to lots that did not receive manure. We didn't find a significant association when we are looking at lots that receive manure up to 5 miles. Now, going to the second study is to identify the manure pumping and receive related risk factors with reporting a PRRS outbreak. So for this analysis, we're going only looking at, for the pumping analysis in this case, pumping and receiving manure are going to be two different analyses. For the pumping, we have 1,239 pig lots that they all included a pumping event. For the receiving manure to the adjacent crop field from a different site, we have 123 pig lots. And in this analysis, the cases, what you consider the cases is the the lots that had PRRS outbreak within 5 weeks after the pumping or received manure event. And the controls here, they did not report any PRRS outbreak during the production period. So, and then the risk factors are going to be the manure pumping related and receiving manure related practices that I'm going to show you soon. So just to explain, we have a list of variables. We did a univariate and then a multivariate model as a final result. So I'm going over the univariate model here for the manure pumping related risk factors. So I'm going one by one to see the application and potential solutions that we can find to improve the manure handling process. So you can see that the first variable, if the previous lot that was placed in the site had PRRS or not. Okay, so you can see in this table the odds ratio is a significant odds ratio that pumped sites that had a PRRS outbreak in the previous lot that was housed in that site was associated with 3.52 times higher odds to have a PRRS outbreak in the subsequent lot. So these results are going to show you that there is a residual contamination or lingering viral presence in these pumped sites, and that these PRRS may remain infections viable and can go back to the pig population after pumping and agitation of the deep pit. The other results that are aligned is the site type and the pumping week in relation to the age of pigs or the age of the pigs. So you can see that for the site type, the risk factor is if the pigs are nursery. So young pigs, they're associated with higher odds, 5.76 odds to have a PRRS outbreak when compared to finishing or grow finishing or into finish sites. And also another variable that we see is that lots that had the pumping between the first and the fourth week of placement, they have the highest odds to have a PRRS outbreak. In this case, 5.64 times higher to have the odds when compared to lots that had the pumping after the 17th week of the outbreak of the placement. So that means that age is an important factor for PRRS outbreak. So nursery and younger animals, they are going to coming from the south farm, so waning of maternal protection, timing of the vaccination as well. They're not having enough immunity. So, and also they are gonna have less exposure events to other wild type PRRS as compared to later on in the production phase for like growth finish and so on. So those are two variables to consider when you're going to pump in those ages just pay more attention what's the potential risk factors here. The other variable that we found in the univariate model is the manurage storage type. So we compare lagoon, or can be the lagoon, the earthen lagoon, or the concrete vats compared to the deep pit. So in this analysis, we found that the deep pit has the lower odds ratio when compared to the lagoon, and was a significant variable. So interpreting this data, like deep pit has 65% lower odds compared to the sites that had a lagoon or the concrete vat. This is a counterintuitive finding, because the hypothesis is that the deep pits, where the pigs are going to be the nearest of the manure pumping, would you pose a greater risk, because their potential aerosolization and direct contact with the viral particles. And the potential explanation for these studies is that all the nurseries, the population with higher odds of PRRS outbreaks, they included only lagoon and concrete vats, given the size of the sites for the nurseries. So this unbalance of the data could have influenced the results here. So we don't have a good interpretation what's the comparison between lagoon and deep pits, because lagoons are going to be more likely to be found in the nursery sites. The other found that we compared the use of drag hose in tank, and we saw that tank has a protective effect. So sites that had tank for the manure pumping, they had 49% lower odds compared to the drag hose. So this is aligned with observations from field experts, because the difference here in the operational features between the drag hose and the truck, the tank hauled by the truck. So truck applicators, they can wash the vehicles, pumps, and hose between sites, reducing the potential for cross-contamination. And the problem with the drag hose is that it's going to be like long hoses that are going to be operating under high pressure. So typically they can serve to one single farm, but due to the design, they can present challenges for cleaning during the large volume of residual manure and limited flushing efficiency that can potentially decrease the load of the pathogen. And we know that drag hose, they have a advantage, because manure is 95% water. So drag hose, you're not spending gas, fuel to transport something that's like 95% water. Yeah, so I think I already mentioned here about the time of the the placement, the time of pumping in relation to the placement. So here's just the table of the final multivariable model. So when you have all the variables together and they adjust each other, just to highlight that most important variables is the PRRS outbreak in the previous lot is going to be a risk factor. Nurseries, the time of pumping in relation to the placement, in relation to the age. So later on the production phase is better. For the peaks, and site size is more a variable that's adjusting the model here. So let's move on to manure receiving risk factors. We found that the number of manure sources is a marginal effect here. So the odds was higher, 2.09 higher for lots that has had more than 2 or 3 sites that are providing that manure. The which can be related to like more manure, more trips, more contact surfaces, so more events of potential mechanical transmission. We also found that more gallons of manure applied to the adjacent crop field also higher the odds ratio, which can be associated with like greater viral load, more aerosolization, and also wider spread risk. So so these factors may amplify the PRRS transmission pressure within the production system between neighboring herds. So it's good to pay attention to that and be prepared if that's going to happen. Similar as the pumping analysis, also like larger site size, they have higher odds ratio. There's a 9.28 times higher odds ratio compared when the site has more than 10,000 pigs. So the 10,000 pigs are going to be related to the nursery most likely. So that's going to be also associated with the age of animals. So nurseries, larger farms are going to be having higher risk for the PRRS outbreaks. And the distance between the receiving manure and the site was an important factor here. For instance, the sites that receive manure in less than 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers, they have a odds of 6.44 higher odds compared to the sites that had higher than the 1 mile or 1 mile between 3 miles or more than 3 miles and 5 miles. So here's the final model for the receiving manure event. Just to highlight for all this screening of variables, the variables most important is going to be the site size. Again, the larger sites, they're more likely to be housing the nursery pigs. So those are the age that we need to be more careful when we are doing pumping, and the distance between receiving manure and manure application. So lower the distance, higher the risk of the PRRS outbreak as well. So to finalize here, so how producers can use these results is some hypotheses and suggestions. So manure is going to happen. We have limited storage, and it's an important fertilizer for the crop fields. Just be prepared that these manure events can act as an ice storm, like stressing pigs, suppressing immunity, and mixing populations. So which are going to be a good environment for the PRRS that can be already present or newly introduced infections. So for the PRRS spread and cause infection. So the ideal scenario, which I don't know how much is possible, right? Due to the pumping schedules, to manure pumping application when the site is empty between lots. But when there are pigs in the site, think about age of pigs. So high risk pigs age is gonna be the nursery pigs, like the nursery pigs are going to be the ones that may suffer more with a potential PRRS outbreak after that pumping. So if you can delay the manure pumping until later stage of production is the ideal, or it's going to reduce the risk of PRRS outbreaks. Think about it's possible to coordinate like vaccination schedules or prophylactic medication to it's going to have pumping, so increase the immunity of those animals to ameliorate the clinical outcome of the PRRS outbreaks. And monitor using oral fluids in serial testing during and after the manure events to understand potential PRRS outbreaks here. So, and for in terms of biosecurity and equipment and people, right? So dedicated equipment keep the manure pumping dedicated to a single site, if possible, clean between pumping events, disinfect thoroughly between farms, downtime between sites for that equipment to sit and dry to reduce the viral survival. Uh, that's commonly done, like equipment and personnel working with manure should not enter the pig's facilities. Truck wash and disinfection. So ensure that the tankers, mainly the dragline hose, because they have a higher risk, and tractors to be washed and dry between moving farms. Visitor policy. So again, avoid the contact between the people with the animals. If it's possible to share pumping schedule with the neighbor farms to decrease between farms, across farms, transmission risk, so to raise awareness and for the neighbor to be prepared for this coming event. So with that, I want to thank the PI of this project, Dr. Gustavo Silva, the other collaborators, the swine system that provide the data, and the project funding support, the Swine Health Information Center and the FFAR. And I'm ready to take questions here. And I want to thank you for your time listening to this presentation.
Well, thank you, Dr. Poeta Silva. Very, very interesting information there, and I think some good takeaways that producers can consider, especially as we move forward in the coming months and try to get maybe some equipment ready, or maybe give some time to strategize of what are some different things we can put in place from a biosecurity standpoint when we get into hauling season. Just a few questions that I had. So I thought it was interesting where you pointed out that PRRS, live PRRS virus could be detected at 35 days at 4 degrees Celsius, right? So I thought that was interesting from the standpoint where ideally we're not hauling manure because we want to be able to maximize the nitrogen stability in the soil until the soil is about 50 degrees or 10 degrees C in the Midwest, right? So typically we want our soil temperatures a little cooler, which in my head creates a pretty stable environment once we haul that manure for the PRRS to be able to stay, stay alive or stay present in the field even after hauling, right? So I guess my question from that is, when we're looking at risk level versus a barn that might be actively breaking with PRRS or actively shedding, or maybe one that's had some history but is not clinical at the time of hauling, what's the risk difference between, like, say, those two sites that producers maybe could think about and consider?
So your question was about the risk for a farm that's negative and positive?
Sure. I would say a farm that's actively clinical with PRRS and actively shedding versus one that's maybe had history of PRRS but not, say, actively clinical. So like if a wean to finish barn, if they broke early in the production phase,
Yeah.
but they haven't had any clinical signs for maybe a few weeks or months.
Yeah, because even though like the one that's breaking with PRRS actively breaking with PRRS, if you introduce a new strain, that's going to cause more problems, even though there is some immunity. But we know there is no like a good heterologous immunity across strains. So if you have a new strain, you don't have immunity, you're going to have higher problems. So it doesn't mean that if you have an active PRRS, you're not gonna have anything. And more load pressure of virus is going to cause problems for those pigs. And the immunity history, yeah, can help if it's the same strain, right? If you have another strain, you're gonna have problems for the pigs as well. So good indication, good practice is to try to work from the cleanest to the dirtiest on those pumping schedules. Like you start for the negative ones, go to the more stable, and then the dirty ones, which is the clinical active lots.
Sure. Thank you. One other thing I thought was kind of interesting. Correct me if I misquote this, but I had written down that there was 49% less odds risk of tanks versus drag lines. Thought that was interesting, just from the standpoint that I think a lot of times we feel like it's manure maybe getting drug out on the roadways that creates, allows vehicles or employees to serve as vectors to be able to walk manure into a barn, which isn't necessarily the case maybe in a dragline scenario because that manure is staying in a hose. So
Yeah.
maybe kind of expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, let me expand on that because because the data is being analyzing for the site that's undergoing the pumping. So for that site that's being pumped, the the tank is going to be offering lower odds compared to the drag holes. But that doesn't mean that for the other sites where the tanks are traveling and carrying manure are not going to be affected by that spread.
Mhm.
So that data is related to the site that was pumped. So for the site that's
Okay,
pumped,
sure.
okay. So
Yep.
it makes sense, right? The site was pumped, the manure is going to be farther, right? It's going to be loaded and drove away, but and compared to the drag hose, that's going to be more time uh, closer to that manure being pumped and attached to the drag hose. But that doesn't mean that tanks that are better, because the tanks has the situation where you have spread or carrying contaminated material across different farms.
Thank you. No, that's great, great intel there. So, okay, we've got a question in the
Mhm.
chat that is
Yeah,
a lengthy one. So,
yeah, I
in
can
fear of
read
me,
you.
yeah,
Mhm.
I'll let you read it. In fear of me paraphrasing and then not asking the right question, I'll let you um,
Yeah.
read that, and I will read it for our audience just so they're aware as well. So, um, in the study related to persistence of PRRS in manure, PRRS virus was inoculated to the manure and checked at different points of time and temperature. However, results about presence of PRRS in feces are quite inconsistent. Have you checked the presence of viable PRRS in any lagoon or deep pits of farms included in the study? What are your experiences about that? So, reading
Yes.
that for the audience, I'll let you field that question.
Yeah, I want to thank you for the question. Uh, and yes, that's correct. That study was through inoculation of the feces. In this study that I presented, I did not collect samples from the lot study. I only use data stored from the swine system. So I use the data that they have in PRRS, detection tissues, mortality, movement, the pumping schedules, uh, and so on. So we integrate those data and create the data sets to be analyzed. So there's no collection of samples. The evidence that we have for PRRS being viable in the manure is that found the odds ratio that we found that PRRS, when the lot had the PRRS before, was associated with higher odds to the lot that was pumped to have an PRRS outbreak. So that's not an evidence, and then hypothesis that PRRS that was from the previous lot may survive in the deep pit and may recirculate on that, or can be brought by other and may yes and recirculate in the deep pit. So no, we don't have samples to show evidence of the pores in the deep pits and lagoons studied. What I have from in a different study, so I'm not the leading author of that study, it's another colleague, Dr. Daniel Moraes. So Daniel Moraes, they did a prospective study. So they went to barns and they collect samples for PRRS and PED, Delta coronavirus and TGE, 2 weeks before pumping and then 2 weeks after pumping. And what they saw is that from outbursts, they collect oral fluids and manure samples from the deep pit. Okay, so from the manure samples from the deep pit, there is some detection of pores by PCR uh, on the manure. We didn't have any success in isolating pores from that study. That's what I have as data.
One final question for myself. So I guess is there any thought to looking ahead? So looking at this stuff and looking at some of the data you shared today, it kind of highlights the risk of not having PRRS or breaking with PRRS. Is there any work to look as try to find a specific site that was pumped, hauled to a facility, and try to link it, actually try to match or prove through investigative work as far as certain virus types that maybe were pumped to a field that maybe spread it to an adjacent barn, or actually trying to prove causation, I guess is maybe a better way to put the question. Is there work
Yeah,
being done in that space?
I think proving causation here is a too strong statement for what's going on the field. So because there's so many variables to be controlled, and we don't know what comes first and what comes second. So most of these studies are going to be like observations on this case. What we have, I look at the PRRS strain through the ORF5 sequencing of PRRS strains, and I found few matchings between the site that was pumped with the strain that was found in the receiving site. So there is some evidence that may be the same strain is being carried over to different sites. But again, it's ORO5 of PRRS, which is a really small percentage of the whole genome. So we cannot show evidence or causation that's the same strain. We have like a few part of evidence, let's say, that could have the same strain being carried over through ORO5 sequencing of PRRS.
Very good. Don't have any more questions in the chat, so with that, I'll go ahead and I think we can wrap up this month's webinar series. But again, want to extend thank you to you, Anna, for coming and sharing your data and the work you've been working on. I think it's very informational stuff that certainly I think going forward as this research continues to build out will likely be something producers can use or can find value in. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I want to thank you all for this opportunity. I appreciate, and thank you for the questions from the audience. Yeah.